Hello, and welcome back to video 7 of my RimWorld tutorial video series. Thank you for joining me. Last time we talked about trading, and we went over the assignments for outfits, food, and drug policy. There was something I did forget to mention on this tab that you can very easily change on this tab. And that is over here, these two things. The first one is how a colonist will react to a threat when they're not drafted. Drafted is you can select a colonist and hit draft, and this basically turns them then into a soldier. They go where you tell them to go. They'll usually fire if they see a enemy. They'll do whatever you do. They basically become a pawn that doesn't make a move unless you tell them to. But if they're not drafted, this tells them how you want them to respond. By default, they're all set to respond to fleeing. This is a very, I think, usual choice for a lot of people. If there's something that's going to be causing a threat that is right on top of them, best thing is usually to flee. However, I usually set this to attack. The reason for that is if the best example is if I have my hunter out in the woods and they're trying to hunt an animal that then becomes a manhunter at them. Usually animals will be faster than humans. Depends on the animal and depends on the human, but in general, animals will be faster than the human. And so I want them to attack once it becomes aggroed to the colonist. I want the colonist to try to attack it. And if I can get a few shots on the animal before I have to run away, it's more likely that, I'll hit them in a leg or something, so it will, make them slower so I have a better chance of getting my colonists out of there. I mean, usually these don't come into play so much because as soon as anything goes down, you're pausing the game, you're drafting your individuals, you're telling them what you want them to do. But this is really good just if there is you're playing on a high speed and there's all of a sudden a dangerous situation. What do you want them to do? I usually like them to be able to attack by default. You can also set this to ignore, but that's when you get into real big problems. They'll ignore any sort of threat around them. So you could see colonists, marching out in the middle of a battlefield to, plant some flowers. Doesn't really make sense, but if they're set to ignore, they'll just ignore any sort of danger around them. So I almost never do ignore. I sometimes keep it on flee, but recently I've been doing it and setting it to attack. The other thing that you can change on this panel is the what kind of medicine they get. So there's a few selections. You can say that they don't get any medicine whatsoever. They don't even get doctor care. If they're injured, tough, they're injured, we're not going to do anything about it. And there's doctor care with no medicine, meaning the doctor will use their medical skills to try to stop bleeding, patch up wounds, but not use any medicine for it. So this makes their ability to cure that wound or to patch it up much less effective. And then you can basically decide what's the best amount of medicine you want to get them. I usually keep it early game on herbal medicine, so they're only using herbal medicine. Right now we don't really have much herbal medicine because we started with this industrial medicine. So, I might switch this actually to the industrial medicine because that's the kind that we have right now, but usually this medicine is really good and you really want to be using it only on life-threatening situations, when there's an infection that's really bad or something like that. There's also Glitter World medicine, which if you go to best quality medicine, Glitter World medicine looks like this. It's a very high-tech medicine. It can do stuff that the other medicines can't. It can cure things outright. It can cure things a lot quicker. It's needed in some special operations to cure certain things that can't be cured other ways. Glitter world medicine, really, you only want to reserve that for really the most specific reasons. By default, everyone is allowed to get up to in glitter world medicine. I would highly recommend to reduce it at least to this. Like I said, I usually keep it at herbal medicine, and I will tell my colonists to harvest some of these herbal medicines. There's not a lot on this map. There's more over there. There's a patch over here. Yeah, so I'll tell just the ones that are close by. You can harvest those. So I think it's only these 3 are going to get harvested. But then we'll have a few herbal medicine. And again, you can always change that at any time. So if they're set to herbal, you can always change it to industrial. You can also, I've been changing it from the assign tab, but you can just click on the pawn and change it here. Here you can also tell them if you want them to self-tend. Self-tending is less effective than if you get tended on by someone else. But if you only have one colonist that can do any medical whatsoever, you might need to make them self-tend. I usually keep this off and only turn it on when I want them to self-tend at a specific time. But yeah, so that's a little bit about the assignment tab that I forgot to mention in the last video. In this video, I hope that we can get the stove up and running. There, it's just connected now. We, again, don't have a consistent power source, so this stove might be blinking on and off until we get some batteries in. We are fairly close to getting batteries. We're more than halfway there. Guillermo has been doing pretty much just researching and only that. I'm actually going to get Guillermo to clean. Guillermo? Is this in our home zone? It's not. Important. Always keep up on your home zones. All right, so I want Guillermo to see there's all this vomit over here. No one's been cleaning before they've done anything in this room because it wasn't in our home zone, and that's probably been making him research way slower. It is a dirt floor, so there is that. And we'll want to get this, floored as quickly as possible, and that'll even increase their productivity and stuff like that. But for the meantime, we can at least make sure there's not vomit right next to them. Okay, so now that we have our, I'm going to get these 3 things hauled out. Now that we have our cook and our butchery up, some important things we want in this room. We definitely want a light source. Again, colonists perform way better at their tasks if they're doing it in a well-lit area. We're also going to want to get some dining chairs in here, and I'm going to put dining chairs because they add more comfort, and you really want pawns to be comfortable while they're doing their task, especially if it's a task where they're just sitting around and, cooking. I've actually been doing research since I started this tutorial series, and comfort is really not important in bedrooms, actually, because the reason for that is colonists are asleep, and when you're asleep, your mood actually doesn't change. If you're super comfortable, hey, that's great, but your mood's not going to change to affect that. Your mood gets, stabilized at wherever you were at when you went to sleep. So as soon as possible, when we get statues up and coming, I'm going to put statues in these rooms and get rid of the end table and dresser for now, because comfort doesn't matter, and also these things are taking up space in this already cramped room. So we'll actually get more impressiveness if we remove these items and then put in like a nice statue, and then it'll be considered a much more impressive room than having these kind of things that are good for comfort. Comfort is still really good for in a hospital, because you'll have a bed, but the people recovering in a hospital will be awake during some of that time, so their comfort will matter. But in bedrooms, it really doesn't matter. Since we don't have a hospital right now, which is another build that we're going to need to make soon, I'll keep these in here for now. No point not having them in there. But pretty soon we will be getting rid of those because we do not need comfort in bedrooms. All right. So now that we got these up, we can now set our bills in here. I'm going to increase the speed. So for the butchery table, there's really only two things you'd really ever want to do at a butcher table, and really only two things you ever can do, and that's butcher a creature and make kibble. Kibble is a great thing for if you have a lot of pets and animals. Almost all animals will eat kibble, so it's a great way to kind of maximize a lot of your food source. A little bit of food, a veggie and meat will make a bunch of kibble. But we don't have a diversified food source right now, so we can't really make kibble. I always put on butcher creature, and I always do this just do forever. If there's a creature that needs butchering in the freezer, butcher it. And this is another build that's really good to change the radius of. I don't want them going all across the map because they will, if there's a dead corpse in the corner of the map that is allowed, they will go and find it and butcher it. I don't mind them moving a bit out of the colony, but I do not want them to go to the ends of the map for a corpse. So I definitely changed that. Something that's good to know about butchering is it increases the cooking skill, but there's really no worry about having someone who has low cooking skill do it. So it's a great way to work up, if you want to start have a second person who you want to build up their cooking skill, but you don't want them making the meals yet because their cooking skill is so low that they might cause food poisoning. You can, assign them, only Maxie does butchering, and so they'll do all the butchering and grow their cooking skill. Maxie is our only cook that we're doing, so we're not going to restrict the skill allowed. And then this is how I set up my stove usually. I usually say cook simple meals ×4 and a cook simple meals ×1. And the details for this are, I want to make, I'm saying make simple meals ×4. This is making 4 at a time. So it lowers the amount of times they're going back and forth for ingredients. I want to make them, I usually make at least 3 days worth of meals. So for these colonists, they eat 2 a day. So that's 6 meals that we need a day. So that's 12 for 2 days, and that's 18 for 3 days. Because this is ×4 and the numbers can get a little wonky, I always keep it in increments of 4. So we'll just have them do 20. That's a little bit more than 3 days worth of meals. I want to say do this until you have 20, actually. Look everywhere. Yeah. Pause when satisfied, and I don't need you to keep this at 20, but definitely start making meals again once you dip below 8. Once you get to 8, we'll still have enough for everyone for 1 day, but then they'll start making them so that we don't get low on food, too low on food. So if something happens, we're not caught with our pants down with no food. By default, they usually X out human meat. Good. Don't make your meals out of human meat, and don't make them out of insect meat. Insect meat is really good for using in kibble because animals don't mind eating it and it won't make animals sick. But this, I think, even if it's cooked, insect meat has a chance of making your colonists sick. And if that's not the case, I'm pretty sure they just don't like eating it. So by default, these are already checked off. I say keep those checked off. And then, if there was anything you didn't want them to make meals out of, usually you don't make meals out of insect jelly or fertilized eggs. That's good. We don't want them doing that. But pretty much anything else we can. If you wanted to save a certain amount of meat or a certain veggie for something else and not to put in your meals, you can totally disallow that here. But in general, we just want them to make meals out of anything as much as they can. And this is usually, when I'm doing meals, I don't want to run the risk. I either set a person to make those meals, or I say the skill level is 8 or higher. 8 is the skill level that is required so that you will not have a chance of getting food poisoning from an incompetent cook. So skill level 8 is what you need. Unfortunately, Maxie's only at skill level 2, so that's just where we're at. Maxie will probably make a ton of meals, and they might cause food poisoning, and that'll be a shame, and that'll be something that we have to deal with. But there's not much we can do. The other thing that affects food poisoning chances is, even if you have a great cook, if your kitchen that you're cooking in is dirty, then there's a higher chance of food poisoning. Now, what's interesting about this game is actually having a dirt floor. It is considered dirty, right? Cleanliness -1. So it definitely is dirty a little bit, but if we keep it as a dirt floor, that's pretty much as dirty as it will ever get. You can't put more dirt on a dirt floor. You can get vomit or blood on a dirt floor, and that'll make it more dirty. But you can't track in more dirt on a dirt floor. So the dirtiest this will ever get, unless it gets blood or vomit in it, will be a -1. Now, if we tile this and make, let's say, wooden floors, wooden floors by default would be 0 they would have a cleanliness of 0, or a dirtiness of 0, so they would be pretty clean. But then we can track in a lot more dirt, and they can actually get a dirtiness of lower than -1. So actually, for now, we're going to keep this as a dirt floor. Soon, we will pave this over, and I do have a mod installed called Common Sense, which, it's the one mod I have that kind of changes a bit about the programming, and this will make, it's called Common Sense because it makes the colonists do common sense things. Like right before they're about to work on something, they'll clean their area so they can be more effective at it, which would make sense if you know that you are going to do it slower when it's dirty. They're going to clean beforehand. It would be something that I would normally micromanage anyway. So the fact that this mod makes it them do it just automatically just saves me a lot of time. It also makes them haul things back after they're done, let's say, mining silver or steel. They'll haul it back with them instead of just leaving it there. Another thing to consider when you're doing the build for cooking is where you want them to put it. So after they make these 4 meals, by default, it's take the best stockpile. That's not a big deal here because our freezer is right by the cook. So I would normally just keep it like this. But a lot of people swear by just dropping it on the floor. They'll drop the things on the floor so they can go straight into cooking again. They don't have to do any hauling in between the task. And then your dedicated hauler or someone else can move those meals into the freezer so they don't spoil. Again, since we're so low on people and there's not much hauling getting done because there's so many tasks before hauling, I'm not going to say drop on floor. I'm going to say take to the best stockpile. And by default, that means the highest preference and the closest one. So they'll take it to this one. So I always set up the simple meal times 4, and then I always set up my cook a single simple meal to the exact same specifications. I say do until you have 20. We're going to unpause at 8. And all this means is that if they don't have the amount of ingredients to make 4 at a time, at least they'll make as many as they can until they've run out of ingredients. So, right now, for a simple meal, you only need 10 of something. And if you ever need to look, you'll see, well, they don't really show it here, but it's usually, this is a different build than usual, but usually they'll say, like, if you're making a shirt, how much of each thing you'll need. Anyway, you need 10 of an ingredient to make a simple meal. And simple meal, you can use either veggies or meat. It doesn't require both. But if you were to make a fine meal, which we will want to make in the future, it will require both meat and veggie. I'm going to do a little something too. I am going to change, Nessa, I don't care about your constructing as much right now. I'm going to take that back to a 2. I want you to be growing. I want you to finish this growing here so we can get more food in. And I'm already thinking we should expand this a little bit more. Just another thing to keep in mind is some people put a space of 4 in between their growing zones. That's because you can get blight, and that's a disease that affects crops, and it can jump up to 3 squares away to any other plant. I usually don't worry about this. If I get blight, I try to handle it immediately, and so it doesn't jump that much around, but it can easily jump to all your things if they're not spread out. But if you had grass connecting them anyway, the blight could jump over to it anyway. So I don't usually worry too much about that, but I do usually put a little bit of a space just in general to my growing zones. Okay, so now that we have our bills for food set up, hopefully those will start getting done. We also need to, as always, cut more wood. Wood is the name of the game, and that's why it's, as you can see, wood is a great early game resource, and that is why we started in a temperate forest. Because imagine starting in a desert where there is no trees. That would be really hard. Okay, Anessa's getting to that growing. Great. So the other thing I wanted to talk about with meals and stuff is we're running low on meals. Today we will run out, and we may not have enough crops in order to make more meals. So to prepare for that, we're going to harvest some berries. Now, harvesting berries is great because they can be eaten raw. So if you don't have a cook, or if cooking is off the table for whatever reason, you can, colonists will eat them raw without a debuff, but anything you eat raw always has a 2% chance of causing food poisoning. So there is that, but it's a risk I'm willing to take. Gosh, my tongue is all tied today. Anyway, just because, it's better to not starve than to have a little upset tummy. So when you're harvesting wild berries, what you do is you just find a berry plant, double click on it, it'll highlight all the other berry bushes around, and then you can hit harvest, and whichever ones are fully mature will be marked to harvest. If they're too young yet to get a full crop out of them, they won't get marked as harvest. But if you have something like this where you have a bunch of berries right in a row here, here's a trick that I like to do. If you have someone that's on to growing, is doing plants, which we do, you can make a grow zone here. It doesn't matter what plant you say to grow it, and you just turn off sowing. This is kind of like what we did when we made the wind turbine. But what this will do is they'll maintain this area. So they're going to cut down these trees because I told them to. But what they'll do is anytime that there's something to be harvested in this grow zone, they'll come and harvest it. So they'll come and harvest these berries now because a few of these bushes are ready to harvest. So they'll come and harvest this. And then the next time, in a year or, whatever the growing period for these berry bushes are, they'll come and harvest them again. So it's like a permanent statement that, hey, just keep harvesting these berries whenever they're ready. That's great. That works well when they're bunched up like that. Sometimes you'll get a berry bush that's just randomly all by itself, and then you might just want to randomly, let's just harvest that. Let's see, all right, this is ready to harvest. See, I'm not going to set up a growing zone here because it's only like 2 or 3 really close. Okay, we got our first quest. So that's a bit about berries, and then I think we can talk just very quickly about this quest. and quests in general. And then on the next episode, we will start hunting, I promise, so that we can finally get some meals in and don't have to worry too much about the food shortage that we are about to go through. Okay, so we just got a quest. You can open your quest at any time by hitting this and, hitting quests, hitting the quest tab and seeing all the ones that you have. Also, you can just click it and it will go to it, but then it will remove it from that area. So this is a quest that shows up in every playthrough. There's a few quests that you get early on that will show up in every playthrough. So it's a person from the refugee dominion, which in this playthrough is the Empire. If it has Imperium or Dominion or something in the title, you're pretty sure it can be the Empire that it's talking about. So this is the Empire for our playthrough, and it's calling nearby. So this is someone who's in the Empire, and they're being attacked. They're being attacked by a man-hunting monkey. So they want to seek refuge in our place. Because they're a countess, when you get higher up into the Empire, there's a lot of things you can't do. So she probably won't be able to work for us or anything, but she just wants to stay in our colony until this man-hunting monkey is dead, right? So she's going to come on. She's not going to join our colony, but she's going to be a pawn that we can control temporarily. And then if we kill the monkey, they'll give us a reward, and the reward is to get honor. So this is your first step into getting honor into the Empire. Deciding whether to join with the Empire is a total preference. It's all about kind of what you want to do in your game through. There's a lot of perks to joining the Empire or to getting honor with them. You're not a part of the Empire, but it means you have a relationship with them, and you have a rank within their empire. The more ranks you get, that pawn can then get psionic abilities. Every level that you gain or rank that you gain in the Empire comes with a psionic level. So they'll bestow upon you a psi-link level. So that's a great way to get the magic in this game. It's the psionic magic. And the other thing is that you will then become friendly eventually with the Empire, or if they don't become your allies, you'll at least have someone in the ranks that can trade with them, which is great because the Empire always has some really good stuff to trade. So, and if you want to make an enemy out of the Empire, that is totally a thing too, because another quest that will always come up is the exact opposite, someone running from the Empire and they want your help, and if you accept it, then you become enemies with the Empire. But for now, we're going to accept this, and you want to accept it for the person who has the most social, because if they become a noble, if you're going all the way up to being a high noble, like a count or a countess, you're going to want high social, because that will kind of help with certain things. They can make throne speeches and improve the morale of your colonists. So if they have a high social, they're more likely to be able to do that. You do want to check on their traits, though, because if they have something like greedy or jealous, those will make it so that they are a more annoying ranked noble. So the higher you go in the ranks of nobility, the less things you can do. You become kind of snobbish and will refuse to clean or refuse to haul things, eventually refusing to eat anything but the best foods and things like that. So a lot of traits can compound some of those finicky natures. But Maxie's are best at social, even though she doesn't have a passion in it, and she doesn't have any traits that would be bad for being a noble. So I'm actually going to accept this quest. Well, we're going to accept it next video, but we'll accept this quest, we'll kill the monkey, and then we'll get our first level of psionic abilities and our first rank within the Empire. So I can show you all that. I think that's a good place to end it now. Thank you for joining me. Again, as always, I welcome any comments or suggestions, or if you have any questions, please put them in the comment section below. And coming soon, I'm going to be launching a Let's Play series, which I have some fun ideas for it, and that way we can get some people in on it and contribute to kind of the decisions we make in the colony. Because it's fun to kind of do a collective storytelling in that way. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and good luck out there and have fun.